Okay, so Year 12 Algebra Revision, Part 3.
We can't see anything.
You can't see anything. Yeah, it would help if I plugged you in, wouldn't it? Funny, I could see it. All right, so here we go. You're not going to go so far? Okay, don't go dark. Okay, well, you know. All right, so here we go. So in this one, they were talking in DI, right? They were talking about the pathway of a football being modeled by a parabola. Well, especially because we spent so much time in it in the calculus section, we know what a parabola is, right? A parabola is a U-shaped, and the equation of that U is always defined as a, what kind of equation? An x squared, a quadratic equation, right? Okay, so remember that we have a parabola, is that U shape, and it either opens up or it can open down, right? If it opens up, what do you know about your x squared term?
It's positive.
It's positive. If it opens down, what do you know about your x squared term?
Negative.
It's negative, right? So you know some pieces of information just from looking, or just from knowing it's a parabola. Yes? So, in this one it says, a football reaches a maximum height of 8 meters and travels horizontally 4 meters before landing again. Okay? So, if you kick a football, or any ball for that matter, is it going to start up, go down, and then go back up? No way. It's going to go up, then what? Then back down. Okay? So, it goes up and then back down. So, we're talking about this shape of parabola, right? Okay? And there are a couple of pieces of information they give us here, right? It says that it reaches a maximum height, H-E-I-G-H-T, a maximum height of what? 8 meters, right? So that tells us that if we draw the ground, right, we know that the highest point of our parabola is going to be 8 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah? No rocket science there. So we're talking about a parabola that goes up and then back down like that. Okay? It says it travels horizontally 4 meters before landing again. So the entire distance it travels horizontally, which is like the ground, right, is how much? 4 meters. So that means that this distance from one end to the other is 4 meters. Do we agree? We're happy with that?
Yeah.
What do we know about a parabola? One side is identical to the other, right?
Yeah.
That the point in the middle, that highest point, which is called the vertex, breaks a parabola exactly in half. Doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that from here to the middle is 2 meters, and from here to this end is also 2 meters. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, calculate the equation for the football parabola pathway. So we have a formula for that. We need a distance, and we need a height. Okay? And they don't give you this formula, do they? Yes. All right. So we factor in reverse because we know that these are the zeros of our polynomial. And then we're going to substitute our y and our x to be able to work it out. So let's get a little space here. So if y is 8, And x is 2. So 2 minus 0. 2 minus 4. Then 8 equals k times 2 times negative 2. Which is 8 equal to negative 4k, multiplying it all out. Then all I have to do is solve to get the k by itself by dividing both sides by negative 4.
So k is equal to negative 4. And then
Okay.
you substitute that into your original equation.
And there we have our original equation.
Okay.
Right? Let's go through it again, but this time let's do it neatly, and I'll write down the steps. All right. Okay. Well, hold on. I'm going to rewrite everything I just wrote. Okay. So we know that the height of the football, the maximum height of the football, was 8 meters. We know that the distance it traveled was 4 meters. We know that the shape is a parabola. Right? So we have a parabola where this height is 8 meters. It starts off, when you kick it, it hasn't gone any distance, right? But when it hits the ground again, it's gone 4 meters. We know that at this point, that halfway point, that's 2 meters. So that gives us the formula for the vertex. Okay? Do y'all call that the vertex?
Yeah.
Okay. So the vertex is at the point where x is 2 and y is 8. Do we agree? Okay. So that's our vertex. So what we're going to do is use just the factored form of a quadratic. Y equals k times x plus and x plus, but since these are positives, remember when you put them with an x, what's going to happen? It's going to turn them into negatives. So x minus 0, x minus 4. So if you'll remember this part of the formula, then you can have everything you need to do. Because otherwise, then after that, it's simply just using your x values and solving. So you know your vertex is x4. You know that your x-intercepts are 0 and 4. Again, because we started at 0 and we ended at 4. So those are the places where it hits the x-axis. Okay. So then just plug that into the formula. So x minus the first x value, x minus the second x value, whatever that's going to be. And we put in the 4 and then 0 and 4 from our equation. Now, I already know that at the highest point, at that vertex, then that means x is going to equal what number? 2. So since I know a point that is on the parabola, now, do I have to know the vertex point? Nope. Any point, any x value would work. So we're going to get y equals k times x minus our 2. I'm sorry, 2 minus our 0. How can I say that wrong? Right? So, plug in the x value of the vertex. And then just solve for k. Right? Oh, and we also have our y value. X value of the vertex and y value of our vertex. Because we know the y value as well. All right. Simplifying that. This gives us negative 4k. Divide both sides by negative 4. And we get a k of negative 2.
And then you have to put it in the original equation.
Then?
Right, so
Okay.
you just
Go ahead.
messed up those two falls, not the
well, we divided both sides by -4, which makes those two divide away, which is why I divided by -4 over there. Whatever you do one side, you do the other. Now that I know what k is, that was the only missing piece, wasn't it? When I had all of these pieces here, the only missing piece of that, so we can do it right there.
Wait, how do you get -2? Sorry, I'm just going to
8 divided by -4.
The k here?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so it was -4k, so since that's -4 times k, the opposite of multiply is divide, so we divided both sides. Okay. All right, so now that we know our k, we can substitute it back in here and then work it out to find our equation. Right, so plug it in, again, plugging it into this and then multiplying all that stuff out, okay? So we're looking for y. We're going to have our x's in there too. We know our k is -2 times x minus 0 times our x minus 4, and just multiply all that stuff out. So that gives you -2 times x, right? If you just multiply those two together, times x minus 4. -2 times x is -2x squared. -2x times -4 is -8x. So we end. Okay. All I've done is just plug those in. Let me write it down in another page, section so that you can see it a little better. It's y equals. We're putting -2 in place of our k, right? We had x minus 0 because 0 is one of our intercepts. We had x minus 4 because 4 is our other intercept, right? So let's just simplify that. X minus 0 just gives you x, right? And you can multiply those in any order, doesn't matter. I'm going to multiply the two monomials together because they're easier. What's -2 times x going to give me? -2x. And then I have to take that -2x times the x minus 4. Remember, that's just the distributive property. Multiply it times each one of those. So -2x times x is -2x squared, right? Then -2x times -4. Negative times a negative is positive. 2 times 4 is 8. And x times nothing just stays 8. And there's the equation. There's another formula that we can use, and I will make a note of it and pull it up and see if you like that one better. Right? It is just not coming to me at this particular moment in time. So the next question they gave you was nice because it says that we're talking about the football from the last problem, right? So we already have an equation. -2d squared plus 8d, or y equals -2x squared plus 8x. Doesn't matter which ones you use. If you use height and distance, doesn't matter. Or you can use x's and y's, whichever makes it look better for you. And all we have to do is evaluate that if the height of the football was at 3.2 meters. So just plug that in. Which just gives you a quadratic equation to solve. So set it equal to 0. And this is not an easy one to factor. As a matter of fact, it won't. So what you need to do is use the quadratic formula. So first, use the equation from the previous problem. Because we know what that equation is. Then replace y with our new height. Solve using the quadratic formula. And if you do that, you're going to get two x values. Okay. And you can plug those into the quadratic formula all by yourself, I'm thinking. So you're going to end up with 0.4508, and you're going to end up with 3.5492. So if you change the height, you've also changed the distances, right? And one of these is going upwards and the other is going downwards. How can you tell the difference? What does it do? It goes up when you first start, right? And then it goes down after the time gets longer. So which one of these is bigger? Top one or the bottom one? The bottom one. So that tells you that this one is your upwards movement, and this one is the downward one. Okay? So like if you had, doesn't matter what numbers, if you had 2 and 6, which one would have to be the upward one? The 2, because that's when you're starting, right? And the other one would have to be the downward one.
Why is that?
Well, because more time has passed by the time it starts to come down.
Oh.
Right? So the bigger one is always going to be coming down. Right? Okay. Look at question 3, solving the inequation. We call these inequalities, but it doesn't matter. So if I say inequality, you'll know exactly what I mean. All you need to remember for an inequation is you solve exactly like an equation, except for one thing. If you divide, it's really multiply or divide, but there I can see never see any reason why you would ever multiply. Divide by a negative number. So if I divide by -2, for example, when I'm solving, you must reverse the inequality symbol. Other than that, they're exactly like an equation. Well, if you're a betting kind of person, and they give you an inequality to solve on an exam, and the only difference between an equation and an inequality is if you divide by a negative, then at some point, what do you assume is going to happen? You're going to divide by a negative. Otherwise, there's no point to giving you one of these. Okay? So watch for it. So let's look at our equation. We have our inequality, 3 times x minus 2 is greater than 10x plus 5 over 2. So go through the steps. First, we want to eliminate the fraction. Or let's get rid of the parentheses first, I'm sorry. Oh, we don't call them parentheses. Clear the brackets. In other words, you need to clean up the equation before you can solve the equation. And brackets, remember order of operations? It's kind of the same deal. So we got 3x minus 6, just by multiplying both of those by the 3, is greater than 10x plus 5 over 2. Now you have two choices right now. Okay? If you recognize that this is a special kind of inequality or inequation, then you can use a shortcut. If you don't, then just eliminate the fractions using the traditional method. Do you know what I'm talking about, the shortcut? Anybody recognize what's happening? I only have just one big fraction on this side, right? Which makes this thing something called a ratio, where you have one fraction equals another fraction. And if that's the case, then to eliminate the fractions, all I have to do is cross multiply. But if you're not going to see that, don't worry about it. In order to eliminate this 2 in the denominator, that means I need to multiply this side and this side by what?
2.
By the 2. Now, if I'd had another number over here, so what if I had a 3 here?
Multiply the side by 3 as well.
So there's a 3 and there's a 2, so 3 times 2 makes what?
6.
So I could multiply both sides by 6, and that would do it as well, or you could take it into pieces if you wanted to. Either way you learned it, I'm not sure. Again, I'm at a disadvantage because I don't know how y'all learn things. Okay, but now let's multiply that by 2. 2 times 3x is going to give me 6x. 2 times negative 6 gives me negative 12. Over here, these 2's are simply going to divide away. Because think about it. If you take a fraction, then anything before you multiply, you always simplify. And since these two things are identical, they're going to divide away and make 1s. And do you multiply by 1? Nope. Doesn't do you any good, right? So what's going to happen is if you're multiplying by the same number as the denominator, that's simply going to eliminate the fraction. So that's going to give you your 10x plus 5. And now it's just a simple linear equation. All I have to do is get my x's on one side and my numbers where? On the other, okay? So, second part was to clear the fractions. Then, solve. So, I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. We typically move the smaller x term because it keeps things positive. This gives us negative 12. It's greater than 4x plus 5. Now my x's are on one side. My numbers need to go where? On the opposite side. So if my x's are over here on the right, then my numbers need to all go over here to the left. Right? Remember, you can always tell which way to go by looking at your variables. You get negative 17. It's greater than 4x. Because the 5s will subtract away. And the last thing I need to do is simply divide both sides by 4. Oh, they didn't give you a negative. I can't believe it. So that gives you negative 17 over 4 is greater than x. And there's your answer. Now, pardon?
I just want to take a photo.
You bet. Now, you could also take this out to a decimal if you wanted to. And you get negative 4.25. They're identical. Doesn't make the slightest bit of difference which one you give, as long as you give the same one. Right? Okay. So in this case, I didn't end up dividing by a negative, so it didn't reverse the symbol. But if I had divided by a negative, then greater than would have flipped over and became is less than. The next one is just a quadratic inequation. So it doesn't make any difference. If it's quadratic, you're going to solve it just like an equation. What is the only difference between the two? If you divide by a negative. There you go. If you divide by a negative, it's going to reverse the symbol. So, looking at the steps for this one, if you have 6x squared plus 13x is less than negative 6. First, we look for any brackets. Do you have any?
No.
Nope. Do I have any fractions to eliminate?
No.
Nope. Okay. What kind of equation is it? It's quadratic, and you can tell that because the highest exponent is 2, right? And you could solve this one actually by factoring, or you could solve it by the quadratic formula. It doesn't matter. Does it say? It says solve the quadratic inequation. So it doesn't give you a process, so we don't care. Okay? So the first thing, though, in both of them is set it equal to what? 0. We have to have everything on one side. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. 6x squared plus 13x plus 6 is less than 0. And then you can factor it or solve using the quadratic formula. Which do you think you'd do? Quadratic formula? Fine with me. So let's list our A, B, and our C. So we get 6, 13, and 6. So it's x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. That's given in your formula page, right? Yes, good. Okay, so x is equal to the opposite of 13 plus or minus the square root of 13 squared minus 4 times my 6 times my other 6, all over 2 times a, which is 6. Sorry, I didn't put that on there. Now, then just start simplifying it. X equals negative 13 plus or minus. Take the radical off to the side to simplify it. Don't try to do too much in one spot because it'll get you into trouble. 13 squared, it's 13 times 13. Pardon? 13 times 13? 169, isn't it? 13 times 13? Somebody?
Yes.
Good. I can still do a little math. It's amazing today. Then we're going to do the negative 4 times the 6 times the 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Times negative 4 makes what? Y'all have the calculators. I don't.
Right, what do you want? Negative 136.
Negative 136?
34.
I'm sorry, what?
Negative 144.
134?
44.
44. I'm sorry. There we go. So it's 6 times 6 gave us 36, and then we have the negative 4 to multiply with. Gives us negative 144. You agree now? Square root of that, square root of 169 minus 144. What is 169 minus 144?
25.
Sorry?
5.
25. And the square root of 25 is?
5.
5. Yay. And that tells us that it would have factored, right? So 2 times 6 gives us 12. But that's not our answer. I've still got to simplify that to get one down to one number. So it's negative 13 plus 5 divided by 12. And it's also negative 13 minus 5 divided by 12. Right? Because we have that plus and minus business in the middle. Negative 13 plus 5 gives me what? Nobody going to play with me? Negative 13 plus 5 is negative 8 over 12. Won't divide evenly, but we can divide them both by 4 and get 2/3, negative 2/3. Over here, negative 13 minus 5 is negative 18 over 12. It gives us a negative. They'll both divide by 6, which gives us 3 over 2. So my completed answer is negative 2/3. Negative 3/2, right? Okay. Now, but remember, if I divide it by a negative, I have to reverse the symbol. Okay, so my x is between those two values. So either one of those values. It's harder to tell which thing your value is going to be, but because they're both negative, it would be much easier if you just factored it. So this part. Okay? Because if you had just factored it, you would have gotten 3x plus 2 and 2x plus 3. Set them each equal to 0.
Oh, sorry.
Subtract 2. Right? Right. Easier to solve, a lot less, oh, not equals.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like what?
It's a lot of work.
A lot of work, yeah.
Yeah. Lots of pieces. But you know the pieces, just a lot of them.
Oh, no.
Sorry? All right, that's if you had factored it. Okay, no worries. All right, now, the next one, same exact thing, except it's just an equation, but you have fractions first. So let's just talk about the clearing the fractions part. So I am not even going to write down the numerators, tops. All I want to talk about in this one is clearing the fractions. Now, a while ago, all we had in the denominator was a 2. Yes? But this time, we have bigger things. We have polynomials in the denominators, right? So your first thing you need to do is factor the denominators, if they will factor. Right? 2f, it's just common factors here. So 2f minus 3, will that factor? Oh, sorry, that's an f, not a... 2f minus 3, is that going to factor? There's nothing that'll divide into both of them. It's 2 terms, and it is a difference, but they're not squares. Put it in parentheses to hold it together because it's still one denominator, right? Obviously, f is not going to factor. But look over here. What's common to f squared and f? They'll both divide by f, right? So that one will factor. Dividing them both by f squared divided by f leaves you f divided by f leaves you 1. And now I can use all those pieces to build my least common denominator. Okay? So build your LCD. And again, I'm not sure how you learned this, but what I always do is first just use the first denominator, period, whole. So it's 2f minus g, or minus 3, I'm sorry. Why do I keep coming up with the g? All right? Then use any other brackets that aren't the same. So the only other bracket I have is right there, the f minus 1. Is it the same as the one I already have?
No.
Nope. So that means I need it. Okay? And then look for your monomials. Monomial means things that are just by themselves, one term. But notice that I have 2 of them, f and f, right? But they're the same. If they're the same, do I need 2 of them? No, I just need 1 of them. Okay? So building the LCD. I'll post a video that I have of doing this, of clearing these fractions, because it's a process. All right. Now, all we're going to do is simply multiply every term by that LCD. Okay. And when you do, what's the same is going to divide away. And whatever's left is what you're going to multiply the numerator by. So now let's put our numerators in just so that we can see what's happening here. See that negative? Any negatives you always put with the numerators while you're using it? So what's the same? Let's just get some different color ink here. What's the same down here and up and right there?
I don't think the same down there is up there.
Yeah, what's the same in here and there?
It's a little bigger.
The 2f minus 3 part, right?
Yeah.
So that's the part that's going to go away, right? Now I'm going to mark it off, but you can't really mark it off because you're going to do this for each piece of it. So whatever's left, we're going to multiply times the numerator. Yes?
Another question about it's sort of related.
Sure, no problem.
Where's the link to your videos? 'Cause
They're on window.
And you can just search up on YouTube
Or you can just, if you just go to YouTube, it's my channel is just Russell Self. And you can find all kinds of videos there. And then you can type in the title of Clearing Fractions, and it should bring up the video for this. Right? Then, are we done? Oh, okay. So then you can continue. We'll continue this as we go. Sorry, that one took so